passage.
Il est passé. Super, l'artiste. Super, encore un but sensationnel. That's a brilliant bit of follow-up play by Maike. Oh my goodness me, what a shot.
Sagosen setter det hen! Han setter den! De er i semifinale igjen!
Hello everyone, welcome to the Uninformed Handball Hour. It's Chris O'Reilly, joined by Alex Kulesh, and it's time at last for the quarterfinals of the Women's World Championship. Coming on the podcast today, first we'll have Maike Elger, who's a freelance journalist covering the championship with Sportschau on the German broadcaster, ARD. She'll be speaking to us about Germany's journey so far. And then coming up later, we'll speak to Laura Agena, who writes for Playmaker Women's Handball. She's been covering the tournament over in Rotterdam, so we'll get her take on Wednesday's quarterfinals. Exciting times. We finally head out to the knockout. And I was looking back at the notes from pre-tournament, and I have to say I'm pretty happy with how it's all panned out. I got 7 of the 8 teams right. The only one was maybe that I missed out on was maybe a little bit more out of hope than anything. Not a bad call, but I did have Japan qualifying, which they weren't too far off in the end. They were sure. 5 goals up against Hungary, and that would have done it for them, but not to be in the end. The Hungarians going through, as we finally had an interesting game in a group final with Hungary pushing Denmark to the wire as well.
That whole group ended up being a real bloodbath, I would say. You know, ultimately Denmark did sail through, but they had to really work against Hungary, and Japan again, like literally
unbeaten in the main
round. Unbeaten in the main round, seconds away from beating Hungary. Romania also like looking good throughout. I think all 4 teams there really battled hard, and that's where, like, on just face value, when the like groups start crossing in the quarterfinal, you look at this group and you say, okay, these 2 teams that qualified were really tested. They really had to play their best to get through. And I think they played some really top-level opposition, and compared to maybe what you were alluding to with that Germany group, where, you know, one team really sailed through, but where they really tested was that group really at the highest level. So I think this one, probably the most exciting group. In the end, Denmark going through, winning that final 28-27 against Hungary. Hungary made them sweat.
Yeah, they did.
So far, Denmark really looked like they were sailing through, but that wasn't the case. So what did you take from that game?
No, we're really impressed with the Hungarians. I think one of the things we've talked about a couple of times now is if they would be able to carry on that form from the from last year on a home championship through, and what a contrast in a few days from being 5 up, from being 5 down and turning it around to snatch a draw against Japan, which I think would have left them a bit shocked, to having a complete role reversal against Denmark, being 5 up in the second half and then losing by a goal. Sophie Tsemere is like class. I mean, she was making it look easy. There's been a lot of great goalkeeper performances, but she put in a great one there, 19 saves, and it was in the end for Denmark, Amalie Milling coming in and doing something similar to save the day for Denmark. What surprised me a little bit about it is they've played quite differently in terms of the team compared to last year at the Euros. They're trying not to rely as much on Catherine Kluivert. Like, there's a lot of play for Anna Albeck, who I don't know if you've seen too much of. She's 24, a right back, and 189 tall, like a real backcourt shooter, but who can move really well as well. So she a complete opposite to Kluivert, who's short, speedy, and powerful from outside, and Albeck just a real long range shooter. So a bit of width in this squad now, which we haven't seen too much. They really relied on the two Petras last time. They only have one of them at this championship, though, and Petra Simon. And she was class as well. I think she got the Player of the Match award with 8 goals and was quite disappointed to lose that one.
Yeah, she was a little bit quiet at the start of this tournament, and I wonder if it was purely just, they were saving her a little bit for the later rounds, but the last 2 games against Japan and Denmark, the 2 kind of crucial games in this main round draw, she got 13 goals across the 2 games and has really sparked into life, which is a really good sign for Hungary. If we're talking about young talents on the other side, Denmark have Scaloni, who was quiet in the game, but she did pop up with 2 very important goals at the very end, or 3. All 3 of her goals coming in the last kind of 15-20 minutes, obviously giving her the reins a little bit, or at least the trust to play in important games at important times, which is, I think, a positive sign for this Denmark team.
Yeah, a lot of enforced changes, as we've spoken about in this team, but really good for them that they've gotten this test as well. That I think there was a little bit of worry in the Danish media as well about how this team will respond to a game like that, a little bit like what's happening with Germany right now. Now they're going to the knockout rounds without being tested. Germany have had that, they've come through it, and it's not gonna get much easier for them. They await now, and it's a bit tricky to talk much more about them because they await now the second place team from France and Netherlands tonight. But the crucial thing about winning that game is they avoid Norway. At the moment, absolutely nobody want to come up against Norway.
Can you describe the quarterfinal situation? Yes. Because there's been quite a lot of confusion online about who is actually playing who, which group. Yeah. There's been disagreements. IHF has confused things even more. So give us a lay of the land here. Well,
in the end, it was, until the quarterfinals, quite straightforward. The teams that were playing in Germany until now continue playing in Germany on Tuesday. The teams that were playing in Netherlands continue playing in Netherlands on Wednesday. And then they cross over because all the semi-finals are going to be in Rotterdam on Friday. So Germany versus Brazil, and they will face the winner of Denmark versus either France or Netherlands, whoever finishes second in that group, and then Norway versus Montenegro, and then the winner of France-Netherlands versus Hungary. So that is the prize on offer to the winning team between Netherlands and France tonight. You can either lose and take on Denmark straight away in the hopes of getting to the final, or you can win and almost be guaranteed a semi-final if you get through Hungary against Norway. So pick your poison, and I know which one I would do, but it's not about losing a game on purpose for the greater good. I don't know. Well, actually, maybe I wouldn't, because I was thinking about this earlier, and maybe it is better to face Norway in a semi-final than a final. Do you have a better chance? We're really looking ahead now. But if you're France, would you rather them in a semi-final than a final, perhaps?
Or should we be talking about the Netherlands as choosing that path? I do think nation. There's a...
Yeah.
We have this assumption that, France are in that absolute leading pack. And, this has happened before, that they've started a tournament slightly slower. Everyone's like, what's going on? And then there they are in the final. So I'm not counting that out. But I think the Netherlands should go into this round as favourites. So far, again, Netherlands having a full squad, France having a depleted squad. That's really the driver here. France also losing Nokandi, left back with an injury. It is building up. So I think the Netherlands are. It's not France deciding what should they do. I think the Netherlands are favourites here, and they're deciding. And in that case, they're going to decide to win, of course.
Yeah. I don't want to dwell on that too much, seeing as the most people
We'll probably know the answer.
Listen after the so we'll save that for tomorrow's chat with Laura when we know exactly who's there. But that's how the quarterfinals are set up, basically. So they the German side and the Dutch side will cross over in the semifinals, but they stay where they are for the quarterfinals, which means Germany versus Brazil and Norway versus Montenegro. Just a couple of things on Norway that I want to bring up with their win over Brazil, because they just continue to astound.
Stupid.
I mean, they were 10-2 up after 15 minutes. Katrina Lunda, 7 saves in the first 15 minutes, ended up, before she went off, with 14 saves at 67%. We were gushing over 62% against Korea, and she just goes even better. Yeah, winning the game 33-14. They end the group phase of this tournament with their 6 games and a plus 107 goal difference, an average of 17.8 goals, the winning margin per game. I've had a look at the last time they romped to the World Championship title 4 years ago, and this is nothing compared to that, even though they had some weak opposition. Like, they ended up drawing a game and against Sweden, and they beat Netherlands narrowly. There was no such danger here. Nobody can really put their finger on it, but that 45-year-old witch in goal might certainly has something to contribute.
I can't. It's just really difficult to analyze Norway so far, because you've had Lunda doing these miraculous performances that completely demoralize opposition, and that's the key here. Like, in almost every game they just romp out to a 12-3 lead because of the saves from Lunda, and you just really can't come back from that as an opponent. And I don't think you can really fully analyze the games that, the overall as a team, Norway were 20 goals better than Brazil. It's not the truth, because the game is just over, and then people are going through the paces as much as possible, and even going through the paces, they can't get through the goalkeeper. So it's just really hard to figure it out. And Norway's defense is really impressive. It's not just Lunda. We're talking about defense that is actually causing this as well.
I think there's one particular area there which I would highlight with 2 players that we're always a big fan of, Stina Skogrand and Thala Daila, who are playing those number 2 positions, and they are hyper confident, hyper aggressive as well. Like, they are out beyond 9 meters, and basically gave Bruna Tripala no space in the first 15 minutes. Brazil had used that space outside of the center of the court really, really well in this tournament to date, but that was just absolutely shut down. And you can just imagine against Montenegro now, they will basically just be waiting for Georgina Jaukovic to get the ball in her hands and then keep her 10 meters away. It's hard to see teams break that down in the way that they usually set up. Someone's going to have to come up with something special against them, because if you try to play that the way you normally are, it seems they're ready for everyone. And that kind of progression defensively seems to be one of the main things that has evolved since Ole Ekstad has come in. Because I wondered if it was if the attack is a little bit more like taking care of the ball, if they're more efficient, but they're not even. They had 14 turnovers against Brazil. They're missing loads of chances. But as you said, you can, as long as that goalkeeper and defense is working, they'll score in the fast break and, lead 13-3 after 20 minutes. And then, then it's over. So I want, is there any hope in your mind for Montenegro?
I don't think Montenegro.
They'll be happy to be there.
I wonder, maybe there's an element of, not really basing this on facts here, but Katrina Lunda in goals and the defence combined is more effective against non-traditional teams and like Angola and Brazil have both been fantastic in this tournament, but they're not traditional styles, European styles. So they can offset them, put them off, and then Lunde is there to clean up because she knows the obvious angles, the less, not the obvious angle, but she's just there, and that's.
But you couldn't say the same for Sweden.
But Sweden still scored 26 goals. Oh no, they still got destroyed. It's hard. So maybe there's a kind of more experienced team
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Can be a little bit more confident. I don't think that's Montenegro. Yeah, I don't think that's the team to do it. But I don't think it's all said and done in this championship for Norway. I don't think their romp reflects exactly the level they are above the other teams. We'll have to see that as the tournament goes on, and we'll be in the semi-final before we get to see that. That is,
I think so.
That's a formidable force as always. But I want to give just props to the non-European teams in this World Championship. Angola, Brazil, and Japan have shown that they have raised it to such a level that they're really challenging the top European teams. Not the highest level, but the really, really top ones. Hungary, both Brazil and Angola beating Sweden, Japan drawing with Hungary. These are all results against that upper echelon of European teams, not just the Austrias, who, Tunisia beat Austria again. That's a raise, but that's where these teams were a little while ago, hoping to beat the mid-level European teams like Austria or Switzerland. Now we're at a stage that they're challenging the top teams, and really the draw did them dirty in this championship, because you look at that Germany group, how each team, basically Faroe Islands put it to every single team in that group. And I think if you replace Angola and with Faroe Islands, it's a whole different setup there. Japan,
or even Japan.
Anything could happen there. Again, there's stylistic matchups, but they've raised it to a level. Unfortunately, as happens a lot, it is just Brazil in the quarterfinal out of those teams, mainly because of this main round structure, which does, it really favors the top European teams, but still really impressive to see.
And Angola getting the top 12 has a knock-on effect. They get an extra place for the next championship, and the seeding for the next one as well. So that might even things up a little bit luck of the draw, of course, but those things do have a direct knock-on effect always. Also with Japan, kind of similar position for them as last time around, just like getting close to it, but the beginning of the tournament there maybe showing that they needed a better build-up to be up to speed. Between week 1 and week 2 is two completely different worlds there. We'll hear from Maike Elger and get her take on the German run until now, and then we'll conclude with a little look at Germany versus Brazil. Joining us for the first time on the podcast is Maike Elger, a journalist who's been covering the World Championship with Sportschau on the national broadcaster ARD. Maike, it's lovely to have you on. And not an off day, I guess, for you, but how are you enjoying the championship so far?
Yeah, it's never an off day during a championship. Yeah, it's good. I'm enjoying it. I do prefer championships outside of Germany, to be honest. But I guess I'm pretty much the only one.
Yeah. Well, Germany have had a perfect start to the championship when it comes to the results. 6 wins out of 6 into the quarterfinals with a reasonably nice path, I think it has to be said. This is not the typical German championship on either the men's or women's side. It always seems to be frayed with a little bit of drama, some performances that don't go their way, or some unexpected losses, but so far none of that. What do you think about this run so far for the German team to the quarterfinals?
Yeah, I think they played very well. Their defense is good, and I do think they get into that flow. My impression is that Markus Gaugisch did distribute the load quite well. More shoulders carry the weight compared to past tournaments, which could become very crucial now in the later stages of a tournament. However, the team did have it quite easy so far. So Iceland win by 7, Uruguay 26, Serbia 11, like Faroe Islands 10, Montenegro 18. Spain was the closest with 4, but even that win was never really threatened. So it is still a bit hard to say where they are exactly. And it will be very interesting to see how they manage against a better team and also how they will handle situations in the game where they are behind or under a lot of pressure. I mean, in the past, the nerves have been a big issue for the German team. In crucial matches, they didn't perform their best. We all remember the quarterfinal against Sweden 2 years ago, where they played well in the group phase and then they didn't score for 14 minutes in the quarterfinal. And I do have the impression that the team is more confident and consistent this year. It does feel different, but I already said that 2 years ago. So yeah, what do I know?
Because you're there and you're speaking to the players basically every day, if it's at the media call or after the games, and with the other kind of German media or people there covering the championship. What is the thought on how this team might respond to a little bit of a bit of drama or falling behind or nerves? Because I guess that is something that keeps coming up. If the tournament is going so perfectly, you almost want to have a bad game happen at some point earlier so that we know how they react. But now they're into a situation where there's no more second chances. Is that something that anyone is willing to discuss over in the German camp?
I mean, after the match against Spain, they did say that maybe it was good that it was a little tougher. However, I mean, yeah, it was closer than the other matches, but still, I don't think it was ever like in danger. So I do hear from a lot of players whenever I ask them like how they did get into like if they do feel more comfortable or if they do feel like it's different this year, how their nerves are doing, that it is different. But I've also, again, heard that 2 years ago, they have been talking about their development in the past years quite a lot. And I do think there is a development for sure. But the question is it there yet? And it could be. I'm not saying they're not, but I believe they could do it. I mean, especially because they will not face Sweden. They will not have this quarterfinal again. And I do think they are more confident against Brazil than they would have against Sweden.
You made a good point in the article I saw on Sportschau yesterday about also the public taking to this tournament and the fact that the last time Germany hosted a championship on the women's side, the highest number was around 6,000. The attendance at the last game was a sellout, just over 10,500. What do you think overall the response has been like in the German media and the German public to this team? Because I think in handball we're always so focused on the home nations doing well, and I think people are quite happy, even if they're not supporting Germany usually, but just happy to see the home nations do well in the tournament because it means fans are going to be there until the end. So what do you think on a more local level the take to this team is compared to previous years?
I think the quarterfinal still isn't sold out. Yesterday at the press call they said it's about 8,000 tickets sold right now. I'm not sure what the number is right now. I mean, honestly, it's a bit difficult for me to say how it is because I am in this handball bubble right now.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say how it is perceived outside of that bubble. I do think there is a growth for sure. I'm not so sure how many people outside of the handball bubble this tournament is reaching right now. But yeah, honestly, it's really hard for me to tell right now because I am so deep in this tournament.
Yeah, connected to that because you've covered a lot of championships over the years on the men's and women's side, and in your work as well with Sportschau and externally you've done a lot of work trying to promote women's sport and women's stories in sport outside of handball as well as in handball. It's coming with a time, and we spoke about this in the podcast right at the beginning, of the championship about how women's sport is really having a moment, and the point of the tide rising, not necessarily lifting all boats. And we were wondering whether that's because handball is already at a certain level in certain countries that it's not quite catching. Do you think that handball is maybe missing its chance a little bit to ride the momentum? And if so, what are you seeing in your other work in other sports that maybe handball can take a lesson or two from? Because there's a lot of chat about wanting that attention in the handball community, particularly in Germany, but in all countries. But where can they do better?
There are many factors that play into fame, attention, or whatever you want to call it. And success is definitely one factor. But you not only have to know how to play the handball game, you also have to know how to play the media game. When you look at other sports, there are personalities that seek the spotlight. They represent their sport, but stand for more than just their sport. I think a rugby player, we've talked about that before, Ilona Maher is a very good example. She's a voice for gender equality, body positivity, and whatnot all. So I think a lot of people started to follow rugby not because they were interested in the sport in the first place, but because they heard of her, saw her on social media, and then they started to follow her. And through that, the interest in women's rugby grew. And in handball, I sometimes have the impression that players are a bit shy or humble, if you want to call it. We all had those interviews where we got one-word answers, where we felt the athletes were holding back, or whether even try to distract from themselves. And I wonder sometimes if handball players know what they want out of an interview, out of an appearance in a show, or even their own social media activities. And it's so important to figure out who you are and what you want to stand for in public, so you can shape the coverage about yourself and about the team. And it's not about playing a role or doing something that you're not comfortable with, but it's about finding out what your profile is and being authentic in that. Yeah, media coverage is not something that happens to you. As an athlete, you have so much influence, especially with social media. And just like in sports, training is key. You have to do it to get better. Yeah. And you need a good coach who really knows how to play the game. And I feel like there is a lot of potential in handball. I mean, one thing that is also true is that something that everyone who is like an athlete who's in the public eye has to consider, that there's no such thing as purely positive attention.
Yeah.
So when you're in the public eye, when you put yourself out there will be people who like you, who admire you, but there will always be people who disagree with you, who criticize you, and maybe even shit on you.
Yeah.
But there are ways to deal with that. And in order to do that, it's even more important to know who you are as a person, as an athlete, and what you want to stand for, and what you feel confident in speaking on and what not. So you can actually tell your story and not just rely on other people telling your story. Because I can only ask questions about something if I know that's the thing.
Something about it, yes. Yeah. Yes, true. Tell us about your interests and why are you interesting for people? Yeah. In Denmark and Norway, where there's always like so much coverage on both national teams, and every major championship has more coverage than any other country. You know, it comes with the territory that, of course, is going to be negative press, and you know there is always a bit of a culture war between the people covering the championships and the teams themselves about, you know, the kind of press they get. But at the end of the day, with interest, it's not always going to be 100% positive. It helps if you're a team like Norway who are winning everything, and maybe they need to find something to complain about. It comes with the territory. So I think a very fair point there. I mean, for this women's team, there's been no world medals since 2007. You mentioned the success part of the equation as well. What do you think it will do to the sport, particularly the women's side of the sport in Germany, if they can get it back on the podium? Because it's been, you know, it feels like particularly on the men's side, you know, the Bundesliga is in its healthiest shape it's been in a long time. It's getting a lot of attention, both in Germany and around the rest of the handball world. There was a little bit of a culture war in the summer with the news about Ludwigsburg and Anja Althaus having discussions with Tobias Reichmann online, but you can't replace pure success in that regard. Do you think them getting a medal will be a kind of boost that the sport needs?
Success or like a medal would be a massive chance for the national team, for women's handball in general, especially when it comes to, as we talked about, getting out of this handball bubble. Because, I mean, especially in Germany, where we have so many athletes and also quite some athletes who are successful, it's just always a competition for attention. And in the wider audience, which is not necessarily a handball audience, but like just generally sports interested people, success is definitely going to help to put you on a map, but then you have to use it afterwards.
Talking a bit more about how they'll get to that success, we talked about some of the areas that they've done quite well so far with this team, the balancing of the entire squad. But it seems to be a tournament where the top contenders are really cruising through. I was delighted yesterday to see that Denmark were finally pushed by Hungary, and that looked like an interesting part of the draw. Also over with Netherlands taking on France this evening. But on the German side, it's been Germany dominant in their quarter, Norway clearly dominant in their quarter. They'll face Brazil now on Tuesday night, and then potentially, if they come through that, then Denmark's part of the draw. What areas are you excited to see this team thrive in the big games? What areas do you think they can actually hurt opposition, and where do you think they might struggle a little bit? Where are the potential weak points?
I'm not worried about the defense at all. The defense has been very solid. Xenia Smits and Emi von Pereira are doing a really good job. That's really solid. Also with Katharina Filter in goal. So yeah. I think the defense is not to be worried about. In attack, there were a couple of games where they did not struggle, but show some weaknesses. It didn't have major consequences because of how clear the results were. Some missed shots, technical mistakes. But yeah, I already mentioned the nerve, so that will be interesting to see if like a missed shot here and there in a very crucial game in deciding moments will have an effect, or if they can recover from it. And yeah, if that will lead to phases in the match that are going badly, and especially because like if you have missed shots and technical mistakes, that could lead to counterattacks and stuff like that. So yeah, but
you feel they're quite stable overall then in that regard. Like in the defense, that could be crucial, particularly against Brazil, where they have hurt teams a lot in this tournament with their attack. But Norway yesterday, the way they shut you were in the arena, right, for that game?
Yeah, I was in the arena, and at some point, my colleague who was sitting next to me was just turning around and was just like, why don't we just give them the gold medal right away? Why did we? Because it is so impressive, but also a bit scary how dominant they are.
You're a goalkeeper back in the day yourself. Katrina Lunde is having a amazing tournament at the age of 45. Does it inspire you to make a comeback?
Absolutely not. Honestly, she's 10 years older than me, and I don't know how she does it. I have no idea. Like, I get up in the morning and my back hurts and my hip hurts. She looks like she's 25 on the field.
Yeah. Maybe this will convince her not to retire after all. But Maike, that was so good. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for your time, and enjoy the rest of the tournament.
Thank you.
Right, Alex. Germany versus Brazil. Finally, the Germans are going to be tested here. The great non-European hope for Brazil is probably, if you ask them for any of the group winners, this is the one that they would want as well. So both teams delighted to be facing each other in a quarterfinal.
Yeah. It's hard to see because we can talk about Germany potentially not having a difficult group, but they really flicked everyone to the side, and it seems like Germany have a depth in the squad that they have never had. It feels like for many championships in a row, their whole strategy depended on Emily Buck or Emmy Vogel having an amazing game. That she was their kind of superstar. Then they had Greisels and Xenia Smits as the players who could put in a performance. And in this championship, they haven't been they've been the base, but they've just added weapons to the side. Like Annika Lott has been particularly impressive throughout the competition. You know, she plays for Brest Britannia, top level player that's in there. She's been very consistent, and kind of across the board they have, you know, a lot more players. So I think this is like Brazil are actually more what Germany were a couple of years ago, where there's a couple of players, obviously Bruna de Paula, who can turn it up. They have a good team dynamic, not anything particularly world class, but it's like a good team with some top level players who can cause a surprise, while Germany have maybe stepped it up to being like the Denmark of a couple of years ago, a good squad without too many superstars. And that's a difficult matchup to figure out who will go through.
Yeah, I think on paper, the Germans have the advantage also being at home, but they as Maike spoke about, like they've struggled as a squad with nerves in quarterfinals. Like they should have beaten Spain 4 years ago in Spain. They let themselves down. They felt they had a great chance against Sweden 2 years ago. They didn't score a goal in the first 14 minutes, like had a complete collapse. So I think the fact that they haven't been really tested there, as Maike alluded to, is the big question mark for them. And Brazil have a bunch of players who, all of them, are playing like at a solid level in Europe, and then you have a few superstars in there as well. So they have the wherewithal to take control of a team if they're feeling weak. They've done it against Czechia, they've done it against Sweden. They know how to deal with those kind of teams, and I would say Germany could be the Denmark of a few years ago, or they could all of a sudden become, you know, that kind of Czechia Sweden team that fumbles. So super exciting. I have no idea. I think a little bit with Norway at the moment, the first 15 minutes are going to be crucial for it. I think the longer Brazil can stay in the game, the more nervy it's going to get in that arena. And then Brazil have shown they can strike. Don't have a favourite for it. I think it'll be a great story either way, because for Germany, this is probably their best chance of getting to a final as well. If they can show they have what it takes to beat Brazil, then they'd be pretty confident going into a semi-final as well. I'm going to say it's like 55-45 to Germany.
Do you think Brazil will have been like really knocked back by this Norway result?
I saw an image of Bruna de Paula laughing in the mix zone with the Norwegian players. I think they accepted their fate pretty quickly. I think if there's any group of people who are able to, you know, they probably already had an eye on the quarterfinal. I wouldn't have been totally surprised. Like after 15 minutes, they were just like, okay, yeah, this is. I think they're just happy they didn't face Norway in the quarters like they did in the Olympics last year, where they had the record loss. So, as I said earlier, both teams delighted to be facing each other of all the potential quarterfinalists, which makes for a really exciting game.
I think so.
Now it's time to get into a bit more depth about what's been happening over in the Dutch side of the draw. We have Laura Agena from Playmaker Women's Handball, who has been covering the tournament over there for the last couple of weeks. She was in the arena to watch the group finals between Denmark versus Hungary and last night's game between France versus Netherlands. Let's hear what she has to say. Joining us once again on the podcast, a friend of the show, Laura Agena from Playmaker Women's Handball. She's been over in Rotterdam for the entire tournament, covering everything that's happening over in the Dutch side, which is fantastic because I haven't had as much of an eye on what's happening over there. Laura, how are you doing?
Doing good, Chris. How are you?
Good to have you on. And we spoke with Alex earlier in the pod that we're super excited now that it finally gets to the knockout stage of the competition. I mean, for you who, you know, this is your Christmas, right? And it only comes once every 2 years, the Women's World Championship, but you're a proper World Championship connoisseur in women's handball. How has it been balancing the fact that there's a lot going on over the last couple of weeks? You've had some interest, of course, in the Argentine team who've been battling away in the main round, kind of keeping an eye on teams like Japan as well, who were involved in a very interesting main round group. But it has almost felt like everyone's just been waiting for the quarterfinals and the day before the quarterfinals where we saw those group finals. So how do you come to terms with that as somebody who probably enjoys every single second of this championship, but also kind of wants to get it to the business end?
I think up to this point, we're not waiting for the quarterfinals, and I mean no disrespect, of course, for the participating teams, but I think that maybe the most exciting part of the competition was the last day of the main round for each of the groups. Even for the group round, I have to say, Group A was supposed to be the let's say most complicated group of the tournament with Denmark, Croatia, Romania, and Japan. And of course, Japan, I think, ended up, I'm not sure if surprising everyone. They played really well. And I don't think it's a surprise to this point. But it's the first championship they have with Morten Solberg as a coach and another Danish coach for the Japanese national team. And I spoke during the week with Sakura Hauge, the goalkeeper of Japan, and she was really proud of the mentality that the team had. I think it's something difficult if someone knows the Japanese society a little bit. They, that it's difficult for them to be aggressive maybe, and I think this is something that they really improved. They show grit, and this is something that I think really changed maybe from other championships to this one. They were more determined. Not that they weren't before, but it's their personality. Maybe they don't let themselves out a lot.
Yeah.
And this is something that Sakura mentioned in previous championships. And this time around, she said she was really proud of that. It was a change, maybe something switched in their heads. And then they also said really happy with Morten and the way he supported them. And maybe that's also something that helped them show what they showed in the tournament. But going back to the group round, I think Denmark ended up really beating everyone. I wouldn't say quite easily, but they didn't really struggle too much.
Yeah.
And even if it's a team with so many faces that are missing from the last two important championships, many pregnancies and injuries, even the new players really stepped up. And this is something that they also said during the week, that they had to step up and, okay, this happened, but this is our team now. I think everyone stepped up and really showed their dominance. And again, I mean, no disrespect, but I think it's like the first big challenge that they had was really against Hungary in the last game of the main round. When they really saw themselves, trailing, and then in the end, as Anne Hansen said, it's not over until it's over. So yeah, they really won that last game in the last seconds. I would say.
Yeah.
Actually.
There's no disrespect there at all. I mean, you can have good teams that you play against, but it's if you beat them by 11 goals, it's not testing you in the way it's needed, and it's kind of been a little bit of a story of this championship so far. It's for the major contenders until the group finals. Everyone was like, well, we can't be too sure about just how good we are because I mean that's the way the Norway spoke about it. It's like we have to be careful because when they were talking about Brazil, maybe they'll catch us off guard. In the end, they didn't. And now Norway are heading into a quarterfinal or into a knockout phase where they don't necessarily know how they're going to react and how Ole Ekstad is going to manage the team in that situation. The same for Germany. We spoke to Maike earlier in the podcast, and that is her big concern as well. It's like, what happens if there's that nerves that comes into the team like we saw against Sweden 2 years ago?
But I think this is the same that happened also in Group E, where the Netherlands were. So in the group round, and I have to say this because also I'm from Argentina, I'm really proud of the World Championship that these players have played. with some new faces. And for example, goalkeeper Valentina Minucci, one of the standouts of the team on her first World Championship. And Argentina was the team that lost by the least goal difference in the group round against the Netherlands. They lost by 7, and the Netherlands then also beat Egypt and Austria by 12. So, but I think really, again, the Netherlands didn't really have a big challenge up until last night when they played against France and they actually beat them. So, and I think it was the same for France. They scored more than 40 goals to each of the teams in the group round. So I think it's hard to tell, when a big challenge comes up, it's hard to tell how they will react. And in a way, I think if we make a comparison with Argentina, I think Argentina played maybe the third or fourth game in the way they should have played the first. They came to this championship without any friendly games with like big teams. They faced a team from Eredivisie, from the Netherlands. But
okay.
I don't think it's a big challenge for a team like Argentina that is improving their ranking every 2 years. So I think it's a bit difficult when you come to a World Championship to test yourself like this. You cannot test yourself in a group round. You have to do it before, and then build on those friendly games to compete and to do it better here. But when you see the games against Austria and Poland, I think that, and of course this is, we don't know because it's already happened, but I think that if Argentina would have come here with more preparation or with some friendly games, this would have been different. If you look at the games, I think they could have beaten Austria and Poland, both of them. And to me, it wouldn't have been a shock. But
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, this is also what the players said. We need to come here with more friendly games. We are in shape on the third game, and this is the game that we should win. So it's a bit difficult. But then going back to the Netherlands and France, maybe also, I think they came to this main round in the shape, and they met each other in a game that decided the top of the group, and that was the most difficult for them up until now. This is, of course, what I think, but the players won't say it because, of course, it wouldn't sound nice for them to say that. They started the competition
in the 6th game.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I think that's it's an interesting point because teams like the France, Netherlands, Norway, so on can build their way through a tournament and get away with not being at the sharpest in the first week. And we see the difference then between a team like Japan, for example, who did have a couple of warm-up games. They beat Angola. They played against France as well. As you said, maybe something happened there during the tournament where they clicked into that maybe a bit more of a ruthless competitive streak, something that maybe we'll hear from them at some point when they have a chance to reflect on it. But before we get into the games itself, because I want to talk a little bit more, particularly about the Netherlands France game. We had Alexa from the women's handball account on earlier in the championship, who was very excited about how the tier 3 teams have caught up to the tier 2 teams, and it goes back to what you were saying there about the likes of Argentina, where it wouldn't have been a surprise if they'd finished third in that group and get into a top 12 place, which we know how important that is for future championships and qualification places. But on the contrary side, it seems like the very top nations, the tier 1 teams, have pulled away from the tier 2, or is it maybe a case of the second group of teams, their level is dropping a little bit because of it being a new Olympic cycle? I think like a great example is the group with Serbia, Montenegro, Spain, where they fell off the level of Germany and then were very much entangled with Faroe Islands and Iceland, which I thought would happen before the tournament. It turned out to be that way. What is your take on it? Is it a case of the very best teams pulling ahead, or is the chasing pack slowing down a little bit at the moment?
I think in a way it's both, if that makes sense, because I think you see new faces in the top tier teams. You see new faces, but they seem to fit in much faster, maybe others, or maybe the changes are so important that like the whole structure, takes them by the hand, let's say.
Yeah.
You mentioned Romania. I think in the case of Romania, we're talking no less than Cristina Leago being out of the team.
Yeah.
And then maybe some of the new faces are, I don't want to mention any particular teams, but I think it's a little bit of both. And I think, I don't know, Norway, you talk about the system that they have. They always mention the word system, and it's like everything is working perfectly. And I don't think they don't miss Stine Oftedal, for example, but I think you don't think about this team and look at it and say, oh, I think they're missing something. It's been easier for some of the teams to have new faces on and have them work together fine. And yeah, just the quality of the players it's really leveled, I think.
That's it's super interesting, and I think like the next couple of championships will prove it in one way or another, whether it's a case of a second batch of teams just going through a new generation, a new phase, and needing a bit more time. Like I can see, for example, with Spain, there's a lot more to come from this team in the future. But on the on Netherlands versus France, then last night, that group final 3-goal win in the end for the Dutch. I really enjoyed the game. Didn't necessarily expect Netherlands to be, the front runner in this one. Alex did, to be fair to him. He was looking at this from a case of, okay, the Dutch are actually going to decide which route they're going to go on for these knockout phases. What did you think of the game? Was there anything that surprised you about it? And in the end, a 3-goal win, which was fairly comfortable because they held on to it for those last 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, I think it's very comfortable. And if you see the score, they were at some point went in by 5 as well. I think they just took the lead, and also I think it's something we have to mention is that the audience was amazing. It was almost every night, it was a packed venue, arena. I mean, 9,000 people. There's a lot of people, and of course,
Yeah.
France have played quarterfinals, semifinals, and a final in Lille, in Pierre Mauroy, with more than 22,000 people. What? But 22 or 26? Can't remember now.
22. Still over 20. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but they were on home soil as well. That's a difference. And I think the audience for Netherlands have been just outstanding. But I don't think, of course, the victory has to do with the audience, but more with like the defensive display that the Netherlands have shown. And also, I think we have to, of course, mention the MVP of the match, Yara ten Holte. I think she finished with a 40% save rate. So I think it's in the moment where France could have caught up, Yara was there. And Lois Abing said it last night that they have to be really proud of their defense in this tournament so far, not only yesterday, but the entire tournament. But again, I think we go back to saying, France was the toughest challenge that they've had so far. So I think it's hard to tell whether, I mean, they definitely feel confident with their defense, and they have shown it yesterday. But again, it was the best or the toughest challenge that they have so far. Dion Hoshier on a great level, I think, is one of the best backs in the world. They just stepped up, and I think they also they all mentioned the fact that they have the chance to play this tournament at home for this generation. It's the first time that they have a big championship on home soil, and I think they're just really enjoying it. And of course, the audience is not playing, but I think it's an important part for them.
Yeah.
Because everyone mentioned, this is not a humble country. This is what they all say. So they're really happy that 9,000 people show up every night to support them. And I think it's also really important for the future of the sport in this country as well. This is, I think, more like a field hockey country. And I know it because normally Argentina plays finals against the Netherlands of field hockey. We lost more than we've won, but they really are a powerhouse, and they fill up stadiums for that. Having their first tournament here, and with all these people showing up, I think it's been great for them as well.
Yeah, I've been impressed by the squad they've built for this tournament. There's been a lot of the talk, and I want to get your take on it being a last championship as well for Estevana Polman and for Lois Abing, who probably could keep going, but have decided they want this to be the farewell, which feels very fitting. Polman with a brilliant 6 assists in the game yesterday, and then you have players that have come seemingly out of nowhere, and Rome Marschalkerverd on the line with 5 goals.
I was
I'm
expecting
saying
you
it
to
so you
name
don't
her,
have to
so
see
that I didn't have to. Yes.
but like, I think that's a great story as well, that this team they have had a lot of faith in I've had a lot of faith in young players over the last few years, but seem to be kind of settling again. And then they throw a player in like this who's having a big impact. But like on Pullman and Abing, like one of the biggest signs for me was they took a timeout within the last 10 minutes, and Henrik Signell said nothing. Straight away, tactic board was just given to Lois Abing, and she discussed what they were going to do with the team. And then his contribution at the end was, remember, there's 14 seconds left on the suspension, so don't make it too complicated. And that was for one of Malestein's goals. So it's a really interesting sign that like they are real leaders of this team. We were there in 2019 when they kind of surprisingly won the World Championship. So they have that in their DNA in this core of the team. They know how to do something like this.
Yeah, and then they're true leaders as well. And I think everyone was really, I would say, moved this week when mentioning the fact that this would be Lois and Stavana's last tournament. And again, they were really happy to be able to, I think Stavana mentioned it once or twice in it. I feel really lucky to be playing this tournament. I'm not sure whether she meant, I'm lucky that I'm still here to play it. I'm lucky that they still choose me to be here and play it. But I think it's you can tell by the way everyone is cheering on them and then looking for them. But yeah, in terms of the game itself, I'm not sure they've had so many minutes in the tournament, but whenever they come in, they do make a difference. Maybe not in the scoring, because if you see their numbers, they haven't been the top scorers of the team, but the assists from Stavana yesterday were just on point. And I remember this one pass to Rome, whose last name I'm really sorry I will not be able to pronounce correctly, who's also had a great performance. And I think it's nice for these younger players to have some people like them to look up to, and they also feel like they're performing for them as well.
Truly. Now, let's get down to the business here. I want to get your take on these 2 quarterfinals that are coming on Wednesday. Denmark versus France, Netherlands versus Hungary. Seeing as we're talking about the Dutch, will continue with them. Hungary, I think, have been so up and down. 2 days or 3 days ago, they were looking like on the verge of elimination, 5 goals down against Japan. They claw that back, and then they do the complete opposite against Denmark, 5 goals up, and they end up losing the game to finish second. Clearly, there's talent there. They've carried it over from the European Championship last year. What do you think the key thing will be between Netherlands and Hungary, and who do you see as the favourites at the moment?
I hate favorites, maybe because I don't like being wrong if something happens. So, but I think the Netherlands being on home soil will be something to have in mind, because the Hungarian team, they're very young players. Some of them are really, very young. It doesn't seem like it when they're on the court. They have so much experience. The other day they were missing Petra Vamos. When I spoke to the players after the game, they were like, I think they really missed her.
Will she be back for the quarterfinal, do you think?
They mentioned an illness, but I'm not sure if it's like a flu or I think it's more something like that. It's not like a physical problem, like an injury.
Yeah.
But I think it's I don't know. They said the word illness.
Right.
So I think they're really trying to get her back. I think she was not feeling well on that day, so they let her rest. Maybe also knowing that they were already through to the quarterfinals. But still, I think they're a very young team. If you look at the game, they probably missed her mostly because 60 minutes, it's a lot of time for a young player to be in the playmaker position like Petra Shima, but she did really well. I think she was named MVP. She scored, I think, 8 goals on that game, and she was really good. But of course, I think they missed someone to replace her at some point. And
So
I
it
think
sounds like you're putting the Dutch slightly ahead then. Is that fair?
maybe just a little bit they were able to run. This is something that they really like to do, the Dutch. But again, they haven't really played a big match up until last night. So I wouldn't say they're rested. They run every chance that they had. But Lois also said last night that when you're kind of winning this way, you get to make some mistakes on your passes or take some risks. And this is something that on a quarterfinal will be different because last night, of course, if they lost, they were also through, and they really. I don't think any team at this point thinks about which team am I gonna face if I win or if I lose. This is also something that she said, but I think it's true for everyone. Maybe except maybe if it's Norway on the other side, maybe you will really think about it. But at this point, I think in the quarterfinals, anything can happen. So I would put Netherlands just slightly ahead, and also because Lois said we came up short in the last few tournaments, and I looked it up last night, and at the Euro they played for the 5th place, the Euro 2022, and also Euro 2024 they played for the 5th place against Sweden, and they came up short. World Championship in 2023 lost in the quarterfinals against Norway. Paris 2024 they lost in the quarterfinals against Denmark. So she said, okay, we've been doing good in the group phase, and then when it matters, we came up short. So I think it's really the hunger to go into the fight for the medals again, and the fact that they're on home soil. I think it's something we have to have in mind. But I would expect a very tight game as well.
Denmark versus France then. Similarly tight, it seems. Both teams also, missing some key players. For France, it seemed like they really struggled with that kind of set 6-on-6 attack at times against the Dutch. But I'm always wary of writing off the French before the knockout phases because this is where they usually come to life. For me, this one is really 50-50. I'm not sure which way it can go, but do you see one area of the game in particular that, if one of these teams gets right, that they will be able to come through and get the win?
Both teams are defending well, but I think there's one thing that I think Denmark has the edge, and it's the 9-meter shot. They've been scoring way more than France on this department, I think. I think this is something that I think they missed last night. And on the other hand, you have Denmark with Scaglione and Johansen, all scoring from 9 meters. So I think it's the one thing that could make a difference. But also on a good day from Sako, it could change. I don't really have a favorite. No, I think it's going to be a very tough one.
Finally, then, just word on your neighbors, Brazil. Do they have a chance against Germany?
I think they do. This Hasa that they have it was tough to see them lose the way they did the other day against Norway, but I think what happens with Norway is that they make you look a bit off. It's like you haven't done anything good before you played against them. It's like what everyone's talking about Brazil, and then you look at this game and it's like, is this a team they're all talking about? But I think it's just something that Norway does with everyone. And I kind of I was hearing the other day is the Veronica Christiansen on Strijkspiller. She spoke with Sasha, and Sasha was like, "Is it boring?" He was asking all of theirs, "Is it boring at this point to be winning like this?" And they were like, oh, "It's not boring. We don't get bored. We like playing like this." And I think everyone knows this about Norway. If they can beat you by 30 goals, they will do it. It's a great culture that they have. I think Brazil can make it, but again, being on home soil for Germany, maybe that's an extra for them. But this Brazil team, it feels like they could make it far. I don't know how far, but I think the past few championships they've had, they have been close. Again, they lost to Norway the Olympic Games, so I think everyone coming into that match, I think everyone kind of felt like that was going to be the end for them. This time around, they can make it a bit further. So I really hope they do it. Also because they're our neighbors, and this rivalry Argentina Brazil, I think it only exists because of football, really. But there's no way we can begin to compare Argentina to Brazil. And when they do good, I think the entire continent looks up to them, and it's great for them to have these results.
All right, we'll leave it there. Lovely words to finish on, Laura. I'll let you go and enjoy the city. At least get a coffee out there before the handball catches you again and the rain does. All right.
It's not raining today, so I think today is a day where I get to know the city I've been for the past week.
That's it. All right, lovely. Thank you, Laura. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Well, thank you to Laura. That sets us up very nicely now. We have a nice overview of all 4 quarterfinals coming up. The first one's tonight, and then the next pair on Wednesday. And if you were on Patreon, you might have already heard the most of this podcast, because we released the first half, including the chat with Maike Elger, already on Monday. A little bit of a pre-release for those of you supporting the podcast on Patreon, which you can still do. Great time to do it, with a lot happening this week, the final week of the World Championship. And of course, next month we move on to the Men's European Championship. So great time to join us on patreon.com/handball hour. Alex, I think we can begin to wrap it up here.
Let's do it. Thank you for listening. This is crunch time. It's going to get really, really fun and exciting. We love quarterfinals. Any championship, the quarterfinals is the best stage.
Indeed, looking forward to that. But until then, for myself and Alex, it's goodbye.